Welcome to Beyond the Reformer, the podcast where those who love Pilates come together for thoughtful conversations, genuine insights, and inspiring stories. I'm your host, Nick Lenny, and through these chats, I hope you feel more connected to our community, more aligned in your purpose, and inspired both in your Pilates journey and beyond. In this week's episode, we're joined by Catherine Hebb. Catherine Hebb is the founder of Runway Pilates. They are 3 studios in the Manchester and Cheshire areas of the UK. She's been running business for 10 years. She's also been a business coach working with other Pilates and other modality studio owners all over the world. So she has so much great advice to give us on how to run a studio successfully, how to scale from 1 studio to 2 to 3, what challenges that brings, and how she's had to evolve her leadership style to accommodate the growth of her business. Let's dive in. Catherine, thank you so much for joining us on the podcast today. It's really delightful to talk to you.
No, thanks so much for having me. It's lovely to be here.
I'm super interested to hear your story. You've had Runway Pilates for 10 years now, and you've got 3 studios, and I'm really interested to talk a bit more about that work and the challenges that you've had with that. But I'd love to go back to the start, really, and just understand, what do I need to know about you to understand where you are today? Take me back to your early days.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, in terms of Pilates, I kind of started really young. I was really sporty at school, loved all sport really, but netball was my real passion. And obviously, if you've ever played netball or seen it, it's a lot of like stop starting and joint work happening in that. So basically, cut long story short, I had knee issues to start with and carried on playing. Physios were like, oh, it's just growing pains, just crack on. So that's what I did. And then I got to uni and unfortunately, it just kind of went into my back by that stage. And then I just couldn't play. And I really couldn't do much at all. Like I was a real Les Mills back in the day, like those I think it's still probably going actually, but body attack, that real like bouncing around, jumping around, crazy stuff that we think, yeah, we've got to do this, like keep fitting. And that's how it works. I couldn't basically do any of that. So I was a bit like, what am I going to do now? Because that's all I was kind of used to. And in the local leisure centre where I was at uni, I kind of walked past this class and I thought, oh, it's all on the mat. Everyone was lying down. I thought, oh, that looks really easy. Like I could do that. It was called Pilates. Never really heard of it before. So I was like, let's go and drop into that. And it was honestly like the game changer from there on in. It surprised me at how much it works you. Didn't look like you were doing much at all. And so I went like 2-3 times a week. And after about a year, honestly, like I had a complete new body, like different, I had tone in my muscles and my upper body. Previous to that, I was quite like, my muscle was a bit like Arnie, like when you if you go to the gym and you build muscle. And I was like, I toned out, I had leaned out, and I was like, oh, I love this. And the best thing about it, I had no pain in my back. My knees were all better. So it started from there for me. And I was like, this really like works for you. Obviously left uni. My dad was like, got to get into business, go into London. So went into London, got picked up by a sales company and ended up working like for business to business internet sales. I mean, dear God, like after the first couple of weeks, I was like, this is really not for me. But I really went on a soul searching mission because I was like, I don't know what to do. Back then, Pilates really wasn't a career, very minimal amount of studios. It was really more, leisure centers, kind of a part-time job. So I went on this whole soul searching mission for about 6 months and then landed back into Pilates. And I was like, you know what, like Pilates kind of matches everything that I love to do. Really loved helping people, wanting to create a new space. And at that time, I really saw it kind of a space in the market, I suppose. At the time, it was either really old people doing it or people that were injured. And if you were neither of those, there wasn't really a space where you could go and work out, where I was down south at the time. So that's kind of where the idea of Runway kind of was born.
So you did your training. So you're kind of in the midst of your corporate life, burning out, it sounds like. And that's when you decided. So did you do your training knowing that you wanted to open something, or did you do it just as a kind of like, I'll just see how it goes?
When I did the mat work first, I did. And I was like, let's just see where this goes, as a more of a, kind of an interest piece. But then after that, I was like, no, let's I really want to set up my own studio. At the time, I had no idea how to do that. I'd never done a business, like finance degrees, nothing, like had no idea about business. My family had never run businesses. So it was a really, interesting concept. There was just something within me that was like, yeah, this is where we're going to go.
So what took you then from your life in London to deciding to open up in Manchester?
Yeah, good question. So where I was living at the time, down in Oxford and Whitney, there's a great instructor called Caroline Murray, who's one of the top instructors for Stop Pilates in our country. And so I taught with and worked with her for a bit. And then at the time, my boyfriend and I were looking to move up to Manchester to relocate. So that was when I was like, yes, that's when I'm going to set up my own studio. Because yeah, down there was Caroline, there was another Kelly, I think, two really big studios in that area. And I was like, I didn't want to go in and compete with them. So yes, that's why it kind of got born up here in Manchester. But it was so interesting when I first moved up here because yeah, nobody knew what Pilates was.
No.
Like they literally were like, what's pie and lattes? I was like, what, you eat it? And I was like, yeah, no.
And how did you find then? I mean, did you have a link to that area before? Or, I mean, how did you sort of go about deciding what area you might open a studio in? Because even for me,
Mm.
looking at neighboring cities that I know somewhat well, it brings some fear up in me. I think I don't know these people. I don't quite know their patterns. How did you sort of go about that task of deciding where?
I think the first thing is knowing your market and knowing your customers. So like, where's your price point? Who are you targeting? What you're offering to? And I suppose really like which is unfortunate in our industry, but Pilates is often more expensive. You've got a limited number of people you can have in one space. You've got the cost of the rent, the business rates, putting the lights on. And then also for us with the reformer, they're not cheap, like they're 2 to 3, even sometimes more, 2 to 3 thousand pounds per bed. So, just that upfront initial capital of getting going is very high. And then obviously we've got all the maintenance costs and everything. So for me, I was looking at a certain demographic, and up here, it's well known as the Golden Triangle. So you've got some wealth accumulated down more like south of Manchester when I first moved up here. So that was where I kind of pinpointed to go into. And then I think a lot of it comes down to your gut instincts as well. Like, yes, textbooks and, listening to podcasts and listening to experts give you so much. But when it comes down to picking a space, I really do believe, you look at the data, but then really it's a gut feel of like, okay, this location will work because of X, Y, and Z. You could have someone else in the same location, but, they're not near parking, or they're
Yeah.
you know, hidden behind a big wall, or, it's down a dark alleyway, and, women don't want to walk down there at pitch black at night. So yeah, I think it's a combination of data and gut instinct, I
It
would
is
say.
strange, isn't it? You walk in, I don't know about you. I don't know how people open studios so quickly because I see so many locations, and you either you think the space isn't right, or then you think the space is right, but the finances aren't right. Or, and then there's so many bits. And then there's also, you just stand and you go, this is it. Every time I've had a studio, I've gone, just like you said, you get this feeling like this is the one, but that takes time.
Oh, 100%. And I think you touched on something really valid there as well. Yeah, fast forward to now, we've got the industry is very different. I mean, 10 years ago, I've gone from nobody knowing what Pilates is, let alone reformer, thinking it's looking like something out of 50 Shades of Grey, versus 10 years on, and you've got Pilates, reformer Pilates, like popping up on every single street corner. And from previous work that I've done in consulting, unfortunately, a lot of those studios are not making any money. And I'd be really intrigued to see how many are still here in a couple of years' time once the fad has gone away from, reformer Pilates.
Yeah, it's been interesting, hasn't it, to see the growth. Like yourself, my studio's 10 years old as well. We were literally having to educate that Pilates was different to yoga, and then that there was equipment, and why they were smaller classes, and why they were a little bit more expensive, as you said, and also that the kind of ethos was different. It's great to see the growth. It's great to see that Pilates is having a real moment. I think for a long time, I remember doing some marketing, and it was around someone told you to do Pilates. I think that's kind of how everyone back at a point got into it. Something hurt. They said Pilates would be good. You got better from that thing. And then you were like, this is amazing. I love it. And exactly as you said, for your studio's kind of point that you wanted to touch into, there are a lot of people now that are coming at it for the benefits that Pilates gives, but not necessarily the growth is reflecting the depth of the practice. Has that been something that you've experienced yourself, kind of seeing studios open up around? And how do you try and cement your studio's ethos in that kind of crowded market?
Yeah, like 10 years ago, I was educating people on what Pilates is. This is a reformer, this is this. And like you say, why we're different to yoga. Now I find we're trying to educate people on what actually is Pilates still, but we've gone to the other extreme. Because unfortunately, like, with the industry being not being regulated, I really feel for clients out there when they are looking to try and find someone, if they generally do really want to do Pilates. You've got such a myriad of studios and marketing, people trying to claim they're doing Pilates or even reformer Pilates, and they're not even using a reformer for some of those. And I think it's a real shame because some people are getting injured really badly, and they're not being trained properly, they're not being looked after properly, and they're certainly, in my opinion, and from experience of people going to them, they're not doing it properly. Let's talk about Pilates. Really, it's about the technique, it's about the form, it's what you're actually doing on the machine. If you're using a machine, it's what you're doing and how that instructor is actually correcting you and moving you. And I think unfortunately, a lot of spaces are not even doing those as the basics. So I think we're still educating, and I feel like, I don't know if we're going to be continuously educating, but educating in a very different way now to where I was, especially like 8 years ago.
That's such a good point. It's now people know what Pilates is, but you're trying to explain to them that there's different types. And it's not that anything's right or wrong. It's just that they're different. And I don't think clients really know that they're different, whether they're signing up to a teacher training, they don't realize that's unregulated, or they're coming to studios. Yoga's obviously tried to look at this, hasn't it, with the different styles that you go, a yin yoga is different to a ashtanga yoga, to a vinyasa yoga. Like, we have at least some idea of the style and the ethos that goes into that. I'm curious to go back a little bit and just understand from your perspective, when you first opened the studios, or even like reflecting now, how is the studio owner life kind of different to your corporate life?
Well, I think it's definitely still, you get a lot of stress as an owner. Like, people think, I went into teaching Pilates because I love Pilates, and I still really do. Yeah, but being a business owner, there's a lot of stress. The buck stops with you. There's nowhere else for it to go, which is very different when you're an employee in a corporate business. I don't know about you, but hours, there's no Monday 9 to 5, especially being in our industry, we're open weekends, evenings. So yeah, you have to really adapt to that element of it. And I think the key thing actually for me, my learnings over the 10 years, is really your team is your key, and really as an owner, you're in the business of like recruitment. And if you can recruit a team really well, so that's everything down, instructors through to your admin, front of house, sales team, marketing, then your life will be a lot easier. And yeah, it's learning not to do everything, which I think, I would say majority of Pilates studio owners are probably women. And I don't know about you, Nick, but yeah, kind of we want to like take everything on and do it all ourselves. And you can't, like, you've only got a certain amount of time. I think the key thing is not burning out in this industry, because there's no off switch. It's not like you're in corporate where you're 9 to 5 and you've got that switch off at the weekends. Like, it's constant. It's, things are firing in at you. You've got client, staff, both sides of things.
For sure, isn't it? I mean, I think for me as well, similar. I love the flexibility that this work gives you. Having children now, that's been really helpful. But exactly as you said, I sometimes crave, when I finish work, I finish work. When I was on holiday, I was on holiday. If I'd had my children in a corporate business, I'd have had maternity leave, So but equally, I could never go back there. I love that the buck does stop with me in some senses, can go both ways. It can be really positive. What was the transition for you? What sort of drove you to open a second and third studio? And you've touched a little bit already about growing a team. Did the need for teams shift as you got bigger? For me, I felt like when it was one studio, I was a bit like you said, doing it all, really. And then as we got bigger, you suddenly realize this maybe isn't possible anymore. What was your story around that?
My vision for starting the business initially and starting Runway was that I really want to help people. I wanted to give that possibility for other people to feel the benefits of what Pilates can offer. So that was what kind of drove me into like the second and then the third location, because I really wanted to spread the goodness of what Pilates can offer. But like you say, as you grow, I think going from one studio to 2 studios is the biggest shift, because from my experience of working with a lot of studio owners, they have one, they go to 2, and they haven't got any processes in place. So then they can't do everything. They're probably still trying to do everything, but they can't. But there's no processes in place, or like really, ones that aren't necessarily working so great. So my favorite thing that my team probably hear me talk about all the time is SOPs, standard operating procedures. They are the least sexiest thing to create, and I really have to focus on doing it. But what I would say is they honestly make your life so much easier. And then when you have your team, you have all your SOPs in place and they can all follow them. So yeah, I would say for me, it was definitely that drive for wanting to share the Pilates love.
The expansion of your team, then you obviously had to get more teachers. What else did you have to bring on board as the studios grew?
Definitely for us, actually back then, instructors were really hard to find for us, especially reformer Pilates up here in the
Mm.
north, because there wasn't really that many people knowing about it or doing it. So we actually had to create trainings to be able to get more instructors and quality instructors on the team. But for us, we also needed more like front of house admin. We call it front of house staff, so sales team, there to help with the clients transitioning or any and upselling to clients. And then for me, as I've gone into like 2-3 locations, having like an ops manager to help figure out all the operations, because even though from the outside world you think, yeah, there's not really that much to do, but I don't know about you, Nick, but yeah, when you actually have locations, you've got health and safety, there's just, the list is endless and there's constantly things to be doing. So yeah, an operations manager has really, really helped smooth out everything and taking a lot of weight off my shoulders.
Were there any challenges that you faced as you expanded into multiple locations, maybe that you hadn't anticipated?
Oh, a lot. I think actually it's really good if you want to open a business, be naive, because if I think I knew what I know now, I don't know if I'd actually still do it.
You're not the first
Um,
person to say that to me.
I know, right? Hey, look, we're still here, so it's clearly worth it. But yeah, it's definitely challenging, probably more from a personal perspective, because you're really having to adapt the way you do things. You're constantly having to learn new stuff. I never learned a business degree. No one ever, I don't think, out there really teaches you how to manage people. And I think we are in the people management game, really, as a business owner. So yeah, for me, I wish there was more people that we could have learned from, and more people in the industry perhaps that you could have gone to and been like, right, let's shortcut this, and let's learn from what mistakes they made, and hopefully they wouldn't have to make them as well.
There's definitely a piece missing in the Pilates training around business. Even if you don't want to be a studio owner, I always say to our teachers, this is your business and my business, because most people in our industry, in the UK certainly, are self employed. So your success is driven by your understanding of how you also retain clients coming back to your classes. But then for any people who then decide, like you said, to open a studio, being a good Pilates teacher or yoga teacher or any movement teacher does not equate to being a good studio owner. It is a completely different set of skills, and it is a very steep learning curve where the risks are very big quite often. I've got friends who are in the corporate world, and I'll just be explaining to them, oh, we're opening this studio and we're investing XYZ. And they're like, I don't understand how you manage the risk. You forget that there is a lot of risk, and it's sort of balancing it out and trying to make decisions and being like, does this kind of, what's my gut feel telling me, but also have I done my numbers and do they stack up? Because you see people going under, like you said, you wonder how studios will go. You've touched upon a little bit your coaching. You've been a business coach for other studio owners in the past, and I guess you still do some of that work now. What kinds of things are you typically hearing as challenges of studios owners in the Pilates industry? I know you've worked with people sort of worldwide. Are there typical things that are coming up?
There is. And the big one that actually always really surprised me, and it still does surprise me, is how many studio owners do not know their data or their metrics. So they have no idea on their KPIs. Yes, they look at what's coming in and that big number of like revenue, what's coming in, but they don't track their expenses. They don't track their conversions. They don't track how long they're retaining their clients. And that always really surprises me, because I always think, if you don't know your data, then you have no idea where to start first. You're just kind of plucking at thin air, being like, well, I'll just throw this at the wall and see if that sticks. And I'll throw that at the wall and see if that sticks. And for me, everything that you do can always be backed up by your data. And that stems right from your marketing all the way through to your sales and your team and how effective they're being. And one thing that I do is I monitor my instructors' average attendance, class attendance analysis every month, because for me, if that drops, then I know something's going wrong. And essentially, if clients don't want to go to an instructor's class, then there's nothing you can do, once it gets to that end stage. For me, I found, there's not a lot you can bring it back. So if you're tracking the data early on, then you can get in and make some changes before things completely come off.
I mean, that's such a great piece of advice. I thought that I was quite good at business in a sense. Like I measured what I thought was quite useful. And then when I did my own business training and kind of got let into some of the amount of depth you can go into in measuring your numbers, it is eye-opening. It's totally transformed my business, like you said, because we nearly always hit our financial targets, but I always find something in the numbers that says this is what we need to look at. And then that's what keeps allowing us to keep growing. Because, like you said, you can either start to see, and sometimes with instructors, you see something happen in the numbers, and it allows you to have a conversation with an instructor. Yes, it might be that the instructor needs some support with their teaching style, but often for me, what's come up actually has been, we're a business of energy, whether people know it or not. Sometimes something is going on in their life, in their home life, and they don't realize that it is coming into the studio, whether they mean it to or not, and people are kind of reading it. And so it allows you to also be a good boss and sit and say, like, what is happening here? How do you handle those conversations with instructors? Okay, another part of our role that's tricky is sometimes having those difficult conversations, but trying to have them with compassion and understanding that these people are still human beings, and we ultimately want to support them so that they can thrive and we can thrive.
The key thing is going in with an open mind. Generally, as humans, we're very bad at this. We can have a judgment of something and we can see something like, well, that must be what it is, or that we put something against it. And actually, I think the key thing, I think this goes across everything and we do in life, is keeping that open mind and go in and ask open questions, and like you say, show compassion. We are human beings at the end of the day. And I think we need to have that care and consideration for each other. And we all have stuff going on, and I think it's how you cope with that. And just sometimes being an ear to listen to can be a really powerful thing for somebody, especially if they're going through a tough time. And then I think depending on what's happening for them, sometimes for my team, it's like, need a bit of time off, if you're overworked, burnt out, or like, things have just got too much. Sometimes I just go, right, you need a massage, or you would like a massage. Let's go and get you a massage and, just de-stress. So I think, yes, finding those things that somebody needs to make them feel better, and like almost just giving them that little like virtual hug to pick them back up.
Do you find it a challenge bringing across your ethos across a range of teachers across 3 locations now? How do you help support those teachers in, do the teachers come in and do their own thing, or do you have a kind of way that you want them to lead sessions?
So we actually do. We have I put together like a runway method, so to speak, because when I was a client myself and then going to lots of different people's studios, what I found was you could go to the same studio, but everybody teaches so vastly different, from the principles, some might correct you, some might not. All our exercises can have all these crazy different names, like a hip roll could be, spinal articulation somewhere else. And for me, I wanted to, for the clients of Runway, to have that consistency across, so they could go to whichever class they wanted to. Yes, you get that personality and you get that, everyone's got different cues and different ways of seeing the body, and everyone, can link into that. But we have these anchored points of, we all teach the basic principles, and these are, what they're called. We all hands-on correct our clients, because that's, how our clients are going to learn and get more out of their exercises. So we have like a framework for people, for our instructors to work under, but yet it still allows them to have that flourish and that personality. And actually, a lot of my instructors say like they love it because they don't have to start from scratch. They have the framework, and then they can really spend their time thinking about, how am I going to make this varied, or how am I going to layer this exercise, or, making things different and changing stuff. So I think especially in this day and age, we have so much new stuff being thrown at us every day with social media and TV and all of that stuff. We are so bombarded with that. We kind of need that freshness to keep us engaged, I suppose. For me, I'm really bad. If I'm to go somewhere and I know exactly the routine they're going to do, I just switch off and I'm like off somewhere else, because I'm like, oh, I know what's coming. Whereas if you got that variety, then it keeps you guessing and keeps your body guessing too.
What do you think makes a great teacher then? What do you see of the top teachers in your studio? What is it about them that makes people come back week after week?
I 100% think personality. Like, if you're warm, bubbly, and you've got something about you, then people absolutely, drive that, because humans by humans at the end of the day, like you were saying, energy, we connect into that. I think that, and then also consistency, consistency of your teaching, consistency of your practice, and just yeah, doing the simple things, but really well. When I say simple things, I'm meaning basic principles, corrections. I would say those are the two things that our clients really value, and they then see that progression week on week and month on month.
And how do you support your teachers if their numbers aren't doing so well? Maybe you've brought a new teacher on board. Do you have a process in place for how you onboard them and how you support them? Because it does take time, doesn't it? People come out, they're qualified. There's very few who can really hit the mark straight away, and that doesn't mean they're not good. There's definitely a performance element, is there not, of being a Pilates teacher, the ability to stand up in front of a room and perform and deliver something. How do you onboard people and support them with that journey?
So what we do is when we get a new teacher, and especially if they are brand new to teaching, so they've done their qualification, but they haven't had any teaching experience, we will bring them in on an 8-week onboarding session with us. So basically, what does that mean and look like? We do some internal work with them. So we will be going through our framework, giving them some feedback around teaching and how they're like teaching our lead instructor. And then we will bring them into something we call trainee classes. So it's where our existing clients had the chance to come in to trainee class, and they know that it's somebody who's training, and then they're just getting hands-on experience. And for us, it's a really nice way to introduce the new instructor to our clients, but then also the instructor gets that experience. Because I think, unfortunately, with a lot of the training schools out there at the minute, people don't have much training in terms of teaching time. Like, they just hammer them with, this is a muscle, this is the exercise, this is the target. But I think the key thing is then putting that into practice. And so, we offer that within our studios, so that we have that safe space for them to grow and develop and flex that teaching muscle. And like you say, start to put together their kind of like performance kind of personality.
Yeah, I think it's such a good point, because it's until you start teaching real people that in your training, even if you're teaching, it's other Pilates teachers in training. So you suddenly come up against a person who just had a foot surgery or now can't weight bear on their hand. And it's like, how do you shift that class? What do you do? How do you still give them a really, really great session? You've recently expanded the studio and you've added some tower and chair. How has that transition been? What kind of brought it about? And how have the clients found that addition to your studio?
So I got a studio in Manchester. It was too big for what we really needed, but it had the location was right, and the showers, it had showers and all that stuff in there, because we kind of inherited it from a previous occupier. So I got in there and I was like, let's just get going and see how we want to utilize the space. And then, so when I was like being creative and being like, right, we're going to put some walls here and change this stuff up, I created this space. It was too small for more reformers, and also we already have a reformer studio there. So I personally really love like the tower and chair equipment. I think it offers such a different way to connect with your body that reformer doesn't offer. So that's what we kind of launched and went into. It's been interesting. I kind of almost feel like I'm back at the start of where I started 10 years ago, with educating people on what what the equipment is, because some people like chair. Oh, is that like I sit down? Is that for old people? It's a really interesting to see what people's reaction is. And then obviously our existing clients, they've come in and they've really loved it. They've loved the challenge, and actually they feel it so much more than say on the reformer. But I think it's really helping them to work between the three pieces of equipment, because yes, on the reformer, if you lie down and do footwork, you could just lie there and not do anything, like you've got no core connection, you can still push the carriage in and out. Whereas actually if you're engaging, then it's a completely different exercise. So it's been interesting.
It's nice to try and bring more of the system to life, isn't it? So our first studio is a fully equipped studio, and then we have 2 reformer studios. The full equipment, when people get it, they're with you forever. Being able to use the different pieces of equipment really brings to life something. For me, I was really passionate when I was creating a training that it was a comprehensive and it was done together, because for me, my training had been like that, where you would do a piece of work on one bit of equipment and then you'd say, now let's look at it at the chair and let's look at it at the trapeze table. And can you see how it's the same movement, it's footwork, but it's completely different. And why would I give someone that piece instead of that piece? How would that help them? And so, but similarly, even though that's our like oldest studio, now with the boom in reformer, people sometimes come to those classes and say, oh, I thought this was reformer. And they sort of, you need to help them to buy into it. And sometimes, especially with our group equipment, because it's more of a circuit, you haven't got everybody working together. They're kind of working more individually. So it can feel a little slower to get going. But then once you get past that and you understand it, it's great to see how the repertoire can flex and can give your body something different from the different pieces of equipment. I mean, for me, the chair is just magical. I couldn't have a studio without a chair. Every studio's got reformers and chairs because I think it's just such a great piece of equipment. I think I love how you've done it with the towers because I think chair on its own is quite a beastie class. Whereas there's, nice to be able to mix it up. And your existing clients who've been with you then for reformer, are they sort of experiencing that and feeding that back to you that they're starting to go, oh, because sometimes in the comprehensive training, we'll say to people, can you see how this is really a trapeze table exercise that we stole on the reformer or a chair exercise that we put on the reformer? Can you see how really it kind of comes from here? And then we created a version and vice versa. It's nice for clients to start to see those pieces of the system.
100%. I think it's what's really nice for our clients is for me, I always focus back in on the technique. So, finding that neutral imprint pelvis and then your shoulders work and getting all of your principles to stack up so you're feeling it. And I think what's lovely is the tower, can really help elongate that work. You can really get them to focus in on certain areas of the body. I think the core work for chair and tower is in some respects can be a lot more challenging than it is on the reformer, so because you haven't got as much equipment to look after you and to hold you in those positions. And I still think, for me, it's kind of wonderful when you see people when they're working and they don't look like they're doing much, but they get it and they feel it. And you're like, yes, that's Pilates. It's the small movements. It's the, that control and that precision. That's when you're doing Pilates. And that's where that juicy stuff is. That's where the greatness is, for me anyway.
Yeah. And I think sometimes people, they'll be on one piece of equipment and they'll get it. And I'll be like, now can you take that to reformer? Can you see? And they're like, yeah. Swan on the chair is like the best swan. If someone can't do swan, I'm always going to take them onto a chair to learn because they can really find it there and then they can take it elsewhere and do some stuff with that. So as your studios have grown, your offerings grown, how has your role changed as a leader? Has that been a challenge for you?
For me, I taught for the initial 6-7 years of having the business. And then getting to 3 studios, I basically took myself out of teaching because I found I just didn't have enough time to do, and I call it basically Pilates and admin. So Pilates is teaching for me and admin is everything else. And there is so much, stuff to do. And I am forever learning, and I think I will always forever learn as well. None of us are perfect, and I don't have all the answers, but definitely for me, it's been an internal challenge of relinquishing control and finding the right people for the right roles and combining that. And most recently, I think really leaning into being able to have hard conversations earlier. I've noticed, I would shy away from having a hard conversation with a staff member because of, all your own upbringing and stuff to do with that. But definitely, it's not easy having hard conversations. And I don't know if you would agree with me, but learning to find a way through that and finding different language and just almost having the courage to be able to have those hard conversations sooner has been a real learning curve for me.
It's the bit I dislike the most. I hate confrontation. People are really, when I say to my team members that, when I say they you're great at it, I'm like, I hate it with a passion. I do everything in my power to avoid it. I then think sometimes I don't handle it as good as I can because I'm not direct enough because I feel uncomfortable. So I've definitely had to try and work on that. And like you said, it's also an experience guides you. I know where this is going now because I've seen where this plays out. So let's just try and have this conversation earlier. And that's for me has been quite a big part of my leadership evolvement. Like how I've evolved is to be clearer and better in that way so that I can help support people really because it isn't something that comes naturally yet. It is a really important part of our job.
Absolutely. I think actually someone phrased this to me and it really hit home. You're actually doing that person a disservice by not being upfront and honest with them. And like you say, time will tell you that actually you'd much rather have that conversation earlier on because it's going to happen at some point. It's just how much of a conversation you ought to be having. So it's a learning curve and it's definitely keeps me on my toes anyway. I don't know about you.
And I mean, as the studio's grown as well, I'm sure you're the same. There's an awful lot more people working in the business. And in one sense, I feel like, I've definitely heard myself saying my payroll has never been as big, and yet the demands on me have never been greater. So there's
Mm.
definitely a balance, isn't there? Part of what I've been trying to think about my leadership role has also been evolving how present I am and making sure I've got the right people and that they feel empowered to run the studios as much as possible. I think it's quite hard to ever truly be just an owner and step back, especially I think if you've got an ethos. It's different if you want to be a let's script every class. Let's not really treat people as humans. Like there's just a way. I think that's hard. But I know for you, you've been trying to shift that a little bit. It's interesting, isn't it? We teach well-being for a living. I hear myself say stuff and I think, Nick, you should listen to this advice yourself because we're preaching this well-being and lack of burnout, and it's so easy for us to burn out. How are you finding that balance, and are you making any shifts to try and get that balance working a bit better with the demands of 3 studios?
Absolutely. First things first, actually, for me, I put myself under working hours. So I've given myself set working hours because there is always, and I think there will always forever be a never ending to-do list. There's, from little things to big things. So yeah, for me, I've kind of gone, right, less something's burning down. These are my hours, and that's where I'm sticking to. Also just letting my team know, I will get back to you within 24 hours, but you might not get an immediate response from me, obviously, and they know to call me if it's a super emergency. But other than that, just setting some boundaries, I think, with your team and with yourself. And then secondly to that, I think it's learning the art of prioritization. So really being able to be like, okay, what's a priority this week? Because for me, sometimes even on a daily level, that priority will change depending on what's coming in. Being realistic with yourself as well. Like we like to probably think and want to be super women, but we are human at the end of the day. And I think it's having that compassion with ourselves and that grace with ourselves and being like, okay, this is what I'm going to aim to get done. If I can get more done, great. If I don't, then no problem. And it's just being okay with that. And it's funny because my other half always asks me, oh, you finished for the day? And the way he asks it, it's always like, oh, have you finished everything for the day? And I'm like, no, I've not finished everything, but I am finished because it's my cutoff time. So yeah, those are things that I've found that have helped me to get away from burnout.
It's such a great piece of advice. I think it is when you first open, there's no choice. You kind of have to accept you're often a one-man band and you're going to be doing all the things. But as you grow, you definitely have to start putting in those boundaries, and your team will respect them as time goes on. But there's often a little bit of a shift there. And if something's a genuine emergency, that's different. But otherwise, people, especially my team, I love a voice message, but then we send them at the time that we're thinking about it. Then the person thinks they need to listen to it, and suddenly that's them interrupted in the evening. So I think you're absolutely right. Having some boundaries around your working hours, because otherwise it does seep into your life. And the truth is, being a studio owner is your life. This is my life. This is my family's life. And I love it. I really do love it. But there has to be rules around it, because otherwise the to-do list is never done. The emails are never all empty, ever in life. What is a typical week like for you then?
Do you know what? I try and go to the studio 3 times a week to work out myself. So I will go to one of our early morning classes and do a workout myself. And then typically, actually, a lot of it is for me actually on the laptop. I prefer to work from home because I have quiet, and some of the stuff that I'm working on is a lot more of the creative or the next levels, the next steps for the business. So yeah, I love having that peace and quiet so I can just kind of work through stuff. And then I touch base with my team. So my managers, I will be touching base with them. And yeah, every 3 months we always do a team social. So we'll get all our team together. It's a really lovely thing for us to do, and I really look forward to it. And we always do something different with the team. Once in the year we will do a team day retreat. So I'll actually shut all the studios down for the day. I mean, I don't know about you, but we're open 7 days a week. So really, other than Christmas Day, Boxing Day, out of the year, those are the only 2 days that we're ever shut. So yeah, in one Sunday in August, we'll shut the studios down and we'll take the team out for the day. And it's a really lovely time to, have some downtime, bond, chat. And obviously, for us, we're not always not in an office environment. So a lot of our instructors, it can be lonely for them. They're coming in, teaching clients, then they're leaving. They don't get that chance to get together. So so we do that as well.
I think anyone who maybe came from the corporate world really understands the value of those kind of days and socials. I do similar with my team. I don't think that's very well done in our in the world of Pilates. And you do hear that a lot, that teachers can feel very lonely.
100%. I think your team culture it's a more of a challenge because we're not all in an office space, we're not all in that space, but it still absolutely can be done. And for me, life's too short to work somewhere and not feel part of a team. And I think what's one thing that we're missing actually in this day and age is that sense of community, personally and within the workspace. And so for me, I'm very passionate about, trying to develop it, grow it, and keep that alive.
What are your top tips for running a successful studio, for someone maybe with multiple locations who wanting to really thrive in this industry? What are your top tips?
Have good boundaries, have good timekeeping. You got to really want it. Like, you got to have that grit and that determination to keep pushing and striving, because it is not easy, opening businesses, running them, and keeping them profitable as well. And I think know your numbers. That would be another one, big one.
Yeah. Thank you. So we have a little closing tradition on the podcast about some little quick fire questions, and I'd love to ask them to you. So what has been the most influential piece of advice you've been given, and by who?
I would say probably let's go down with the hard conversations, like really having those hard conversations earlier. And I think it was on one of Stephen Bartlett's podcasts. I can't remember the guy that was on there who said it, but yeah, I think there's so much power in that, and it can come across everything to clients, staff, landlords, providers. If you need to have a hard conversation or do that, have that earlier. And I think to have that hard conversation, you then need to know yourself and have that courage to be able to pop yourself into those situations, because I don't think anyone really likes confrontation.
Yeah, I absolutely love the Diary CEO podcast. Is like my favorite podcast. I've listened to it for years and years and years. I know it's really big now, but I've listened to it from when it was really small. There's some great episodes on there. I listened to one the other day, actually. I think you'd like it from what we've just been talking about. And he's like a speaking coach. And he's talking about how to have difficult conversations, how to deal with difficult people, like ways to frame it, words not to say. I took so much from it. I'm going to listen to it again. I thought I literally need to listen to this in one go and really embrace a lot of the tips on there, because it is a skill, isn't it? And being able to do it well is such a part of what we do. What mentors have shaped your life? Have you been privy to work with any real great mentors? You talked about who you work with for Stott.
Definitely, I think, Caroline was a really early influential figure for me, and probably actually going right back to the leisure center with I think her name was Kathy, actually, the instructor there. Like, she was a real influencer in drawing me in. Probably those two from like the Pilates world and business. I feel like there's been lots of little nuggets along the way, like from the podcasts or a book, or even like, from coaching, you get little nuggets from people along the way. And I think those are what make somebody up to, have that experience.
Where do you see the future of Pilates going? We've kind of talked about where it is at the moment. Do you have any thoughts? And again, you've been privy, with your coaching work, to work with studios all over the world. Do you have any thoughts on the future?
I really hope that we're going to get into a regulated industry with the Pilates industry, because I really do feel like it needs it. And I actually kind of almost see us coming back to more the roots of where Pilates began. But yeah, having regulation, people really understanding, around technique and movement, and there's a science behind it. You're not just jumping on to do fitness on it and like moving around and randomly, which obviously, we've got some studios that are doing that at the present. So I really hope that it will transition back to where the roots came from, and we won't be having people getting injured on the machines.
Getting injured on machine is a topic that comes up in almost every one of these interviews I've done. It's just so sad, because this is such a safe practice. And when you really look at the movements themselves, it's very unlikely people are going to get injured from the movements. They get injured because they fall off a machine. And you certainly go to studios, and like I said, each to their own, but their obsession with the lightest or the heaviest spring to make it as hard as possible, and not understand that Pilates is really about educating your body. And so the springs, we train for a long time to understand why we choose springs that are going to give you enough feedback for your body to understand it. And then, of course, you can shift the springs to challenge yourself. But often studios are bringing in those extreme spring choices for someone right at the beginning of their journey. and they fall off. I mean, the injuries happen because someone falls off a machine, which is just so sad, really, from such a safe practice for people to maybe have that opinion about Pilates when it's so way off the track of what the practice is about.
I know, I don't know about you, but whenever I hear of somebody injuring themselves at another studio, or like, we've had it where I've heard like, they've broken their arms, and it fills me with dread, because I think, what have they done to allow them to get to that point? And some of the other studios I've like been to, they're either like doing too heavy a spring, or they're keeping people in positions for way too long, and it's that mindset around the fitness. Well, I'm going to put a timer on, and you're going to stay here and do like 60 seconds of this like oblique exercise, and it's like, you're not teaching that person anything about, like you say, you're not educating them on where they're moving from. They're just doing a movement for a movement's sake. And it's really sad. And it's hard, because when you fall in love with an industry, and a practice like I have with Pilates, and you see it being kind of almost mistreated so badly, and then people misunderstanding it, and then thinking, well, I'm not going to go to Pilates because that actually injured my back. I'm like, it's super sad.
Not to be the Pilates police. I think that's something that's really important, but it's to say there is a difference, and people don't understand there's a difference. And if they understood it, at least they could make an educated choice about where they're going to and what they're going to get out of it. I know when I go to certain studios, I know because of what I do, I know what I'm going for, and I enjoy it. It's fun, and I'm a good mover, and I can see it for what it is. But if I went to one of those studios back when my back was in agony and I had chronic neck pain, I would have thought, well, Pilates isn't going to help me, because that style would not have helped me rehabilitate. So it's for the wider public to understand that piece. And it also goes into people then looking to teach, because again, I think people don't understand that the teaching is also not regulated, despite the fact you might see a level 3 or so many letters. It doesn't really mean anything. And so you don't really understand that your training might not remotely equip you to deal with somebody coming in and saying, I've bulged a disc, but I'm here because I want to rehabilitate. It's great that more people are doing it, but that's kind of why we wanted to have these conversations, is to hopefully start to educate a little bit more around the differences so clients could make a more informed choice. And hopefully studio owners, if they're listening, can also, around their marketing, make it clear, because I don't mind going to those beastie classes. I enjoy it. They're fun. But I know what I'm doing, so I can go in there with an open mind, as opposed to being a beginner. And if you could go back in time, Catherine, and give yourself, your younger self, some advice, what would you say?
Initially comes up, don't do it, but outside of that, I think it's probably, learning to recruit more smartly sooner, so that you're then not getting yourself into the habit of doing everything yourself, or things coming back onto you. So I think definitely recruitment, and would be the best advice that I would go back and give myself.
Yeah, it's such a good point, isn't it? I mean, I remember, and again, we were sort of similar in the time that we were in. There was a limited amount of teachers. So it was a bit like, you can teach, come in, you're available for these hours, come and be my front desk. And then you start to realize it doesn't work. And so, but experience helps you with that as well, doesn't it? I definitely feel like I've got more experience and still have a lot to learn. Recruitment is an art unto itself. And I ask my friends in other industries, like one of my friends is a top lawyer and she does a lot of recruitment. And I say to her, what am I doing wrong? I don't understand. I bring people in and they're not quite right. And she said, it's very common that the person you interview is not the person who turns up. That is somewhat normal. But then, like you said, you're trying to pick it up quicker. So sometimes you don't really see a person, do you, until they start the role. But it's recognizing it quicker, having conversations quicker, and making a decision quicker if needs be on what you do with that person. And then lastly, what has been the most profound gift that Pilates has given you?
Oh, it's given me so much. I think just the lifestyle, actually, Pilates has given me, both physically, not being in pain, which if any of you who's listening, if you've been in pain or you are in pain, honestly, like, I feel for you, because it takes over your every minute of your days. So living pain-free, like really feeling that freedom in my body, but also I think it really allows you to have that freedom of mind as well through doing Pilates. So I would say lifestyle for me.
Thank you so much, Catherine. It's been amazing to hear your story. I can't wait next time I'm back up. So your studio in Altrincham was actually down the road from where I used to live. So I must come and visit sometime and come and see you in real life. I've only ever seen you when we've met. We met in LA, which is hilarious. They're not so close. But thank you so much for sharing your insights. It's really interesting to hear your story at Runway, but also your story as a business coach and kind of what you've come across as well. So thank you so much for sharing that with me.
Thanks for having me.